Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Humor Talks, where I'm talking with different people promoting humor in the workplace. Today we've got two great guys from Peppercomm. They'll be talking a little bit about stand-up comedy because they've done a unique thing with their organization in the workplace. So with me today are Clayton and Steve. How are you guys doing today?
Excellent, Andrew. How are you?
I'm doing well, So before we jump into the stand-up comedy stuff, just give me a little bit of background. What exactly does Peppercomm do?
We do everything but Windows. So
okay.
by that I mean we are a fully integrated strategic and marketing communications firm, heavily into public relations, but we also do web design, events, crisis work for a lot of Fortune 500 companies that you'd recognize.
Okay, great. Yeah, so like you said, everything but Windows.
Everything but
one
Windows.
One of the services that you offer is something called the Comedy Experience, and it's actually related to stand-up comedy. So how exactly does Peppercomm and the marketing stuff that they're doing relate to the stand-up comedy world?
So my name is Clayton Fletcher, and I'm the Chief Comedy Officer at Peppercomm, and I'm in charge of something called Peppercomm's Comedy Experience featuring Clayton Fletcher, as we like to call it, PCEFCF. What it is an opportunity for companies to learn things that stand-up comedians know with the goal of applying those bits of information to their day-to-day work. So whether it's using stand-up comedy skills in your business presentations or as a culture shift agent or internal communications, we found that a lot of things that you learn from doing stand-up comedy would help you in the workplace. So as part of our culture here at Peppercomm, I train, along with Steve Cody here, we train the employees at Peppercomm how to do stand-up comedy, improv comedy, sketch comedy, and script writing with the intention of informing our culture with stand-up comedy and with the joy of laughter. And it's actually gotten us some recent accolades. Crain's New York named us best place to work in New York City.
Oh, wow. Wow, yeah, I can see if people are enjoying their work and actually going into the workplace and laughing some, they're probably going to enjoy that work a little bit more, and of course it's going to be a good work environment as well.
Sure.
So how does an idea like training employees on stand-up comedy actually start in the workplace? How does that come about?
Well, I decided about 7 or 8 years ago to do it as a one-off bucket list type of experience, and I just happened to go through a program that Clayton was running as a professional comedian. His night job is professional comedian. His day job is chief comedy officer at Peppercomm. Clayton made the mistake.
Great titles to have.
Yeah, exactly. Clayton made the mistake of telling me after my debut that I wasn't bad and I should try it again. So I got hooked, and after a couple of years of doing it on a regular basis, I started noticing I became a little bit more adept in the business world in terms of both verbal and nonverbal skills. Decided that my management committee could benefit from this, so I had Clayton train them during an off-site. Once they experienced it, they said, we have to do this as part of our regular management training program. That in turn generated buzz in the PR and advertising trades, and companies started calling us, asking if we could help them break down silos, get people to work better together, and also help bring some authenticity and truth to their corporate storytelling. Because what Clayton will tell you is that stand-up comedy is based upon telling the truth.
Yeah, that idea of truth in comedy. A book that Sharna Halpern read, specifically kind of on the world of improv, but certainly kind of applies here in terms of those factual things. How was the response initially when you let your kind of employees know, like, hey, you're going to do some stand-up comedy? Was it embraced right away? Were people a little bit apprehensive? What was that kind of like?
It's you know what, it doesn't matter whether it's Peppercomm or a Fortune 500 company or a group of doctors and nurses. The initial reaction is somewhere between skepticism and outright hostility. And by the time they go through the experience, there is so much love and warmth, and boy, you've got to come back and do this again, that it's the single best transformational experience and team building experience I've ever seen or participated in. So to answer your question, it goes from negativity to empathy, sympathy, support, wanting more.
Absolutely. That's an incredible transformation for any type of training to be able to go through. For those to be the end results are incredibly kind of powerful in today's, work environment. So you kind of mentioned some of them as well. What are some of the benefits of a group going through a program like this? Well,
it's akin to a platoon fighting in Vietnam. It is an intense, raw experience in which each one of the group members knows that he or she will be trained, but will be going in front of his or her peers to tell 3 or 4 minutes of real things that bug them, offend them, upset them, anything from, a spouse who snores to a train, a commute that never ends, to a sports team that never wins. So it's really fascinating to see when Clayton says, okay, who wants to go first? There are no hands. And then finally someone says, okay, I'll do it. Tremendous warmth surrounding that individual. Then after she is done, you'll see 2 hands pop up. And about halfway through, you'll see 8, 10, 12, I want to go next, I want to go next kind of thing. So the bonding is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, well, as you know, Andrew, you've done stand-up comedy yourself, and you know that it's a scary thing to try, but and most people, they say their biggest fear in life is public speaking. So stand-up comedy is like public speaking where you're actually expected to get a laugh every 5 seconds. So it puts a little extra pressure on it. But, a lot of companies, they want to build their teams, and team building is a big buzzword. HR companies, they want to have team building. And so they try different exercises, not putting those exercises down, but, how about I'm going to fall backwards and see if Brad's going to catch me or not, or the thing when I play the telephone game, I'll whisper in your ear, you whisper in Sean's ear, and we'll see what kind of story we tell at the end. And all those things are fun, and they can be just a nice little break from the day-to-day. But the difference that we've found is when you teach people the art of stand-up comedy and basing it on the truth, and you referenced, Shauna Halpern's book with Del Close, which is a book that I'm a huge fan of, by the way. You need the truth. The truth must be present, or else it's just not as funny. Often it's not funny at all. Whenever I'm in a comedy club and I see a comedian desperately seeking those laughs, but he's doing it in every way other than authenticity, and they tend to fail because the culture nowadays is about truth, reality television, authenticity. American Idol does a lot better than any sitcom or any any fictional account. So that's what it's all about, and comedy is just one way to improve your communication skills, and we found it's also a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's really powerful, the work that you're doing, because psychologists have shown that when people have shared experiences, whether they're positive or negative, that group of people becomes closer together. And kind of you guys are hitting it from both angles, that initial feeling of, like you mentioned with the platoon, that feeling of like, oh, man, we have to go through this whole stand-up thing together. That brings them closer together. But then by the end of it, they've learned a ton about each other, as you're talking about, like with them kind of sharing true stories, and they've laughed together, which is tremendously powerful for bringing people closer together as well.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing, side effect or phenomenon, is after someone has undergone the training, making a business presentation seems like a walk in the park.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it also gives them a quiet confidence, and also a little bit of bragging rights that, hey, and by the way, many of our people, and we've also done this with clients, have gone on to perform in clubs in Manhattan at real shows. So quite a few people don't just do it in the workplace. They'll go on to the Broadway Comedy Club, the New York Comedy Club, and other venues where Clayton will put them on the bill.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That ability to make strangers laugh is incredibly, like, it to me, having done it and still doing it, it is a little bit addicting where it's like, wow, this feeling of making strangers or other people in a room laugh at these kind of ideas and thoughts that you have is pretty powerful.
Definitely, Andrew. And you alluded a moment ago to the bonding that comes from a shared experience and the bonding properties of comedy. And I always make a differentiation between comedy and humor. Like, in my view, humor is anything that makes you smile, and comedy is anything that makes you laugh. And as you probably know from your study in this field, the physiological effects of laughter are very real. Endorphins are released in the brain, convincing the person who's laughing that he or she is falling in love. It's the exact same chemical reaction from laughter as it is from falling in love or exercising or eating chocolate. So we always joke that if you really want someone to fall in love with you, feed them chocolate while they're on a treadmill and tell them a joke at the same time. They're all your bases covered. But what we found is that the bonding that takes place through that laughter is extremely powerful, and it's just a much more effective team-building exercise than anything else that we've seen in the market.
Absolutely. And so in addition to some of the things that I kind of explore, and I'm wondering if you guys kind of feel the same way, is that obviously it's a great kind of program for helping to improve kind of relationships within the work organization through team building. You also kind of mentioned on communication skills, being able to clearly kind of communicate ideas, and also people are more likely to remember things if they kind of laughed or they received them in a humorous way. I've also seen humor be, incredibly helpful with improving kind of problem-solving skills, increasing creativity and kind of that thought process, as well as helping to increase productivity, having a little bit more fun and that kind of thing. What are the types of different transferable skills that you see from people doing the stand-up comedy stuff that then relate into actual workplace kind of gains? So it's not just a just-for-fun thing, which I think is a huge component of it, but do you see other benefits to it as well?
Yeah, I think one of the fundamental challenges the average business executive faces is when he or she is either, talking one-to-one or making some sort of presentation and dealing with either a distracted or neutral audience. So, in other words, filling the silence, filling those awkward gaps. The people who go through, and our employees and our clients who go through the training, are given a whole new set of skills to turn that either passive or, God forbid, negative reaction into a more positive one that actually can turn around a meeting on a dime. And that is absolutely invaluable whether you're trying to sell a program within the organization to someone who controls the budget, or differentiate yourself and get on the fast track within the organization, or in a sales situation where everything else is equal, connect and build better rapport with the prospects. So there are some very real business skills that are transferable above and beyond team building.
Absolutely. And so as people are kind of thinking about this, what does the kind of the program experience kind of look like? Is it a one-day, kind of half-day or full-day? Is it you meet a couple of different times? What's the process like going from transforming someone that's never done stand-up comedy before and that has that negative reaction to, by the end of the day, they're, standing up there and telling a story in front of people and getting laughs, or maybe even going on to a comedy club? What does the program look like?
Yeah, the way we do it, Andrew, we tailor the PCEFCF to a company's needs. So if a company is looking for a one-day team-building exercise, we can use it for that purpose. But where we really think its true power is unleashed is when it's used as an ongoing culture agent. So, it's similar to what I've done actually here at Peppercomm over the last 7 years, It started off as, oh, why don't you teach my management team? Then it's, well, why don't we do comedy with the whole company? And then it becomes, everything from, the way that we email each other to the way we communicate with our business partners and our clients and our potential clients to even the way we do charity. Peppercomm is very active in the philanthropic side, and what we do is typically when a company such as a Leukemia Lymphoma Society or Autism Speaks or any number of Young Survival Coalition, any number of breast cancer, different types of charities that come to us, and they say, can you help us plan an event? Because, again, Peppercomm is also in the business of event planning. We'll say, well, we have a great idea that might be a little different for you. How about if we do a night of stand-up comedy, and we'll actually teach some of your employees to do comedy? And so then that becomes a win-win because then the charity is actively involved in the actual event. So they've learned to do comedy, and of course everyone's curious to see that person, who heads up the, whatever the New York division of this autism charity or whatever the case may be, actually planning to go up on stage for 5 minutes and try to be funny. Steve and I work with that person, make sure that he or she is ready to go up there and really kill it at the comedy club, and then we surround them with love and professional comedians, and we will sometimes do like a charity auction in addition to all that. So what we've learned is that usually whatever the question is, we try to see if the answer might be comedy. And 9 times out of 10 it is.
Yeah, and Andrew, just to elaborate on that, most of the clients, not all, but most of the clients for whom we've done work are in some sort of transition. They've either merged, they've downsized, they've gone through some sort of seismic event in which there are any number of silos or distinct groups that, for a variety of reasons, need to come together, work together better, be more productive, and all of that obviously will impact morale. But typically, that's the problem. But we've done a lot of work in very serious medical and pharmaceutical areas where empathy and listening skills are absolutely critical. So we trained several hundred doctors and nurses who deal with stage 4 level cancer patients, and they told us, look, when we went through Johns Hopkins, nobody taught us how to break the news and how to react. So how do we use stand-up comedy to become more empathetic and perhaps ease the pain of breaking that news?
Which is not to imply that you would actually make a joke at that moment as you're telling someone he has stage 4 cancer. But, of course, you learn skills in comedy as far as being authentic and sharing and just being vulnerable and being sympathetic to someone else and reading your audience and all those different skills that comedians know are actually quite transferable to that space as well. And Steve has to run, but I'm still here with you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve, for dropping in. Maybe Clayton, if you can stay on for a few more minutes, would love to
sure, I'm happy to
ask a couple of questions. One of the points, kind of just to build off of what you guys are talking about, is that studies have shown that people with a high kind of rating and sense of humor are also highly related in emotional intelligence. So having that ability to be more empathetic kind of with people and have that understanding and really understand kind of human behavior and human dynamic, I think, is an important skill to teach, and stand-up comedy can be a great and fun way to actually teach it, which sounds really cool in terms of the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, and we never say that we're trying to find America's next top stand-up comedian, or it's not like there's going to be a casting director from HBO in the audience that night or something. These events that we plan are very controlled, and if someone's doing comedy for the first time, just getting up on stage, as you know, Andrew, since you've done it, just getting up on stage is a victory in itself, because it's something that most people say, oh, I could never do what you do, and now here they are actually doing it. So, that in itself is powerful. But what you learn once you're up there, another thing we'll do is we'll go back later with the company. We'll sit down with each employee individually and watch videos of those first-time stand-up comedy performances. And then we usually blackmail them and threaten to post the videos on YouTube. Of course, we don't do that. But, we'll sit down with them and go over it almost like a football coach would with his team after the game and say, here, here's the time where you could have done this, or when you said that, you see how that really landed, and here's why. Look at your body language. Listen to your tonality and your voice, and just, look at the fun that you were having while you were saying that to the audience. And then there's so many lessons to be learned just from watching yourself and the way you present yourself. And even if you're not training to be a presenter, we all have to present ourselves, in some way on a day-to-day basis. And, everyone can benefit from these skills.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking again a little bit about the experience, and you kind of alluded to it here in terms of getting feedback and stuff like that, but what does the person that's going through this kind of go through? I know it changes based on the program, but is it something where they just kind of get up and try stuff? Do you give them tips on, like, here's the rule of 3 in comedy, or here's how to do a, kind of a setup in punch, and then do they perform for kind of each other in the group, or is there a larger audience? Kind of what does that process look like a little bit?
Sure, yeah. Let me walk you through a typical PCFCF. Say we have a company and they have a division that's now been married. So they had a restructuring, and all of a sudden, John, who doesn't even know Bob, has to share a cubicle with him, and all of a sudden, Mary and Barbara never worked together before. So the company brings us in to help break down some of those silos and break the walls down. So the first thing we'll do is we'll introduce ourselves and explain what Peppercomm is and how I'm the Chief Comedy Officer and what that involves. And then we'll talk a little bit about why we should use comedy in the workplace. So that's the first question we ask, is why. And I don't do this part as a lecture. We talk to their employees, and very often we get surprising answers from the company. Things that are going on behind the scenes start to come out right away, which is great for us, because the more information we have, the better we can tailor the event to the company. Yeah, so then once we get a feel for why we're doing this in the first place, then we start to talk about the ways we use comedy to solve whatever particular problems have come up in the initial discussion. And then I start giving them some nuts and bolts. I talk about different styles of stand-up comedy, whether it be observational or anecdotal or, what have you, put-down humor, all the different types of comedy that are out there and which ones are appropriate or inappropriate for the workplace. Then we'll talk about some more nuts and bolts, terms like you already used, such as setups and punchlines, the differences and characteristics of a good punchline, characteristics of a good setup. And we'll use examples from my own stand-up comedy routine or that of Steve Cody, or, maybe even citing, famous people such as Chris Rock or Jerry Seinfeld or Bill Cosby, my personal favorite.
Yeah, that's great.
And we'll talk about that, and then I'll give them some specific techniques that comedians use. Now, here I'm talking about things like exaggeration or act-outs or callbacks, and all these words that comedians know what these things are, and we use them every single night. But the average workplace, the average businessman, he doesn't know what that is and how it's used and why it's powerful. And so we'll talk about it. And then I assist them with a brainstorm. So we don't just say, all right, now everybody give it up and try it. No, we'll take the next 10 or 15 minutes, try to come up with a couple ideas what you would talk about if you ever got up on stage. We make a point of letting everyone know that no one's going to be forced to do it, but that we're going to strongly encourage everyone to at least give it a try, at least the writing part, so that you would try to come up with an exercise. And then in the brainstorm, I try to get them to share the truth. You want to use the truth. You want to talk about something that happened in your life or something that you saw on television that you had a strong reaction to. And the key there with observational in particular is that I feel the comedian has to have an emotional response to it.
Absolutely.
You have to say, I can't believe this happened, or I really hate that commercial, or I really love what Obama said at the State of the Union address. Whatever your opinion is, there has to be a strong emotional connection to it. And then
and that point of view is so important in terms of creating a brand of comedy that's specific to you. It's like, what is your perspective on that situation? How does it make you feel, and what's your reaction to it? I think that's great.
Exactly, because you don't want to have a stand-up comedy act that any other comedian could ever do. So it has to be uniquely yours, and I think the key to finding that stuff that no one can even steal if they try is it has to be coming from your heart, from your true feelings. And so we work with them on that. And then, to be honest, a lot of times what we end up getting once the employees actually do get up is they tell stories, very often stories from the workplace. that often lead us back to the initial issues that were addressed in the beginning of the session. So that can be fun because now we're learning how to laugh at the fact that life isn't perfect and that work isn't perfect and that literally nothing's perfect. And so if we can laugh at it, maybe we can look at it a little bit more objectively and actually solve the problems. And so then afterwards, we'll get up as many employees as we can, whatever time allows. And then, there's usually lunch break. And then after lunch, we'll do some more exercises, which could involve anything from, improv training, such as some of the things that are found in the book that we were talking about earlier, Truth and Comedy, or just different exercises that I've done in my improv career. We might work on some writing, some sketch writing. We might try to make some funny videos, like 1 to 2 minute comedy videos that then become viral back at that workplace. The way we spend the rest of that day could be, almost anything. And then we like to, if there's time, we like to review those videos, although very often we have to come back on another day to do that.
Right.
And then what we do is we go back to senior leadership at that company, and we'll say, well, what did we learn today, and what would you like to do going forward? And then we help develop a program for them, like if their problem happens to be internal communication, then we'll work with them on ways to use comedy techniques. And they bring us back, either every other week or once a month or whatever the case may be, where we can work with them on using these comedy techniques and these skills that comedians have, trying to develop those skills in the workplace with the specific goal of solving whatever individual problems have been pointed out to us by the company itself as being a particular need. So it's not just a fun day of doing comedy, but it ultimately becomes a solution to a real problem within the culture.
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely more than just even that team building element. It's a great way to kind of get into some of the other issues that might be, that comedy might be the kind of right solution to help solve. So yes,
yeah, it can open that box for you.
Absolutely. So kind of as we wrap up, how do we get this into more companies? It seems like it's tremendously valuable. So what are your thoughts in terms of, is this something that other organizations need? And if so, how do they go about starting to do something like this? Well,
the best way to do it, in my opinion, we've spent 7 years working on this and finding out what works and what doesn't work. So we encourage companies to get in touch with Peppercomm. You can visit our website, peppercomm.com. I'm sure you'll put the link up on your site as well.
Yep, absolutely.
And get in touch with us, and we can tailor this service offering to each individual company based on what their needs are. For some companies, it might just be a half day. For other companies, it might be more of an ongoing program. And we're willing to talk with the companies and try to develop a tailor-made solution for them that involves, as I like to put it, why we should mix business and comedy, as I've actually done in my own career. After I get off the phone with you, I'm going to an audition, and then tonight I'm going to be doing 2 performances in comedy clubs around Manhattan. So I certainly mix business and comedy in my life, and I think that everyone should, and we're ready to prove it.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, yeah, like you mentioned, I'll certainly include a link to that, and I think that's a great next step for people to go and check it out. And I do think that it is something that's tremendously valuable in a number of different types of organizations. So, Clayton, thanks so much for talking with us today, and give our thanks to Steve as well for all of the great insight.
Yeah, absolutely. Really enjoyed talking with you today, Andrew. Thank you very much.
All righty. Thank you.